Welcome, everyone. I am so excited to be here today. If you noticed our title in our in the caption above our on the social page, I couldn't think of a better way to name this segment of than the mother of all mothers of advocacy. I think I didn't use quite those words, but today I'm joined by Charlotte Menio. Charlotte, welcome. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
Charlotte comes to us because I was looking for advocates who really understood kids with migraine. And we had one of our physicians who said, I know, like immediately within seconds, she goes, I have someone that you can talk to. Charlotte, tell people your family makeup. How many kids? Where
I
do you
have
guys
four
live?
kids. I have four children. I've got a daughter who's a sophomore in college, a son that's a senior, a daughter that is a sophomore in high school, and a son that's a seventh grader. And all of them get migraines. So
That's amazing. That's amazing. I can't even imagine juggling those variations of what their migraine may look like and how are they all pretty different, their symptomology?
yes, they are. And they all had very different presentations as well. My son, who's the senior in high school, he's more of what his doctors lovingly call the problem child. He's got very severe migraine disorder that has been very, very difficult to control. And so most of my experience has been with him as a patient. And but through the years, also we've had my oldest when she they've all gotten headaches, and I'm kind of the rub some dirt on it mom a lot. I'm like, oh, you're dehydrated, you're this, just and I've got also highly motivated kids that like to not lay down. So when they get knocked down from something, I'm like, okay, this is we got to take it seriously. So it's a little bit of a balancing act there. But my oldest, the way we discovered her migraines was she's a dancer. She was at a dance convention and taking a class. And those weekends are very long, hard weekends. They're classes all day, performing all night. And but she loved it. So this is what we did. She texts me from inside a class, which she never does because they're very serious about that stuff. She goes, Mom, I can't see.
Oh,
And I was like, well, then get to the front. What do you want? Like, I don't know what you want me to do here.
that's
I'm
the
not
mom
gonna-"
of four kids, by the way, right? Once you
Yeah.
get
She's like, no, I mean, I cannot see. And she told me earlier she had a bad headache, but she wanted to keep going to class. And I was like, what do you can't, you're blind in an eye. Anyway, she came out of class. Another mom there that I was with was a nurse. And she goes, I think she's having an ocular migraine.
Yeah.
And that's what it was. That was her first presentation of a migraine.
Wow.
My sophomore girl, she gets a lot of ringing in her ears. That's her aura for it. And my youngest, he started out once with like a lot of numbness on one side. So all different, weird presentations, but the at least three of them, they're decently well controlled. They could take their rescue medicine and lay down for a while and get on with it. Unfortunately, my older son has had a much harder journey with it.
And do you or your husband either one have migraine?
My husband gets migraines. My mother gets migraines. My brother and sister get migraines. I am like an island in a sea of migraines because I do not. So
Wow. Wow. It's interesting because one of the things we talk to people about is when you have a migraine diagnosis, it presents so much different than just a headache. And I know people are so tired of hearing me say this, but it's going to be my hill to die on. And
mhm.
you've just painted a picture of very different symptoms in one household. And that's so interesting and you had to have those things on your radar to be able to say, hey, this could be migraine. Um,
Yes, my brother gets ocular migraines. That's why I was but when my friend that was the nurse said, I think it's an ocular migraine. And I was like, oh, okay. Now that makes sense. She's
yes.
not having a stroke or dying. Like she's fine. And then, yeah, my mom having migraines too. I just grew up with knowing that, these are some symptoms that she may have and she needs to be laying down, quiet room. And of course, this was back in the day. We don't have the medications, or
Yes.
we now have medications that she didn't have.
Right. We've talked a lot through the month of September. I know we're into October now about school age children. I'm curious for you to talk a little bit about how has this played out for you with your kiddos in school? Did you have to ask for accommodations? How did that? What type of things have you struggles have you gone through with that?
My oldest son, that's a senior, when he was about in fourth grade, is when we really felt like we needed to pull the trigger to get accommodations. And actually wasn't me, because his school had already been accommodating. But when things come up like state testing, and now of course he's taking the SATs and doing all these tests, they don't know him. They don't know, they to have those accommodations, you have to have the 504 plan, and you have to have it approved ahead of time. You can't just
Yes.
show up and say, hey, I need to go take a quick break and take my medicine and have a sip of water. It has
Yeah.
to be done beforehand. So we were lucky enough to have a principal at one of our schools that when I was volunteering there, and my son had been missing quite a bit of school due to some other health issues and his migraines, he was like, we need a 504 plan and we need it now. And it's not, because the state testing was coming up. He wanted to make sure that my son was protected and could take the test in his own time and even make it up on another day if he needed
Wow.
to. So
Wow.
we were very lucky to have that. And then since we've moved on to other schools, we've had different experiences, but all have been generally supportive of having a 504 plan.
Wow. So if a parent's watching and they're like, I'm just not sure, like, little Johnny has to
Yeah.
go to do testing and this could be a good day. So I really hate to ask for during state testing or the SATs. What's your advice to them? Like, is it hard? Is it you have to jump through a lot of hoops to get that?
No, not at all. It's really, for us, it was just having the documentation from your physician. And in general, they're going to have that prepared
Yeah.
and with some tweaks for each patient. So it's, and they're not going to be the only kid in the class that's going to have these accommodations either. There's going to be a lot of them. And the thing is if you need it, you have it. If you don't want it, you don't have to use it. But if you need it and you do not have the 504 plan and you do not have those accommodations, then you have a serious problem that could affect their education. So,
Yeah. Yeah. And most schools want the kids to do well in state testing because it
oh, of
reflects
course.
on the school as well. So I would imagine that's an even bigger opportunity to say, hey, let's put some accommodations in place, especially if your kiddo also gets anxious around testing. That would
Yes.
probably also be a nice, like, hey, if you get anxious, which can sometimes see, I know when people have migraine headaches, they can say, oh my goodness, like their anxiety is also moving with it because they have so much to do or things to get done. And then that also exhausts them emotionally. So
Mhm.
I would imagine that the school would be like, yes, let's put these things in place. We also want those good test scores.
Yes.
What if a parent's getting pushback? Do you have advice? Like you may be in a great school system. You certainly don't have to share which one you're in. But for a parent who's in a school system that's like, yeah, we've got kids with really big behavioral issues, and they're kind of thinking that the school's not hearing them. What do you have advice on what they should do?
I mean, you always want to try and come into these situations where people don't generally get into education to penalize kids or, that I try and always think that if I'm getting pushed back on something that, maybe it's a stressful day for them, maybe they have a migraine. You know what I'm saying? Try and come at it from a very collaborative. I need your help with this. I know that, the word things in a way where it makes them want to help you. Where as a parent, sometimes I get, and I'm a very calm person, but even me, I get like, why are you doing this? We've not had pushbacks from administration. I have from individual teachers.
Hmm.
And where, missing work, we have it in our 504 plan where missing or late work, that they have to understand sometimes just getting through the day of school is all they can do. And then they need to go home, put the ice
Yeah.
pack on their head, take their medication, which is going to knock them out, and hope for a better day the next day. Because, or at least for my children, it's once that migraine starts, the day's kind of over.
Yeah.
That day is done, and we're just going to try the best the next day. So I always try and come at it from like, I want to be firm, but also kind of like, hey, let's try and work together with
Yeah.
this. And then when that doesn't work, when it has, like I said, my only experience with this has been with a couple of individual teachers. And I just move it up the food chain very politely and say, I've already spoken to this person. I know you're next up, and I know that you're going to want to help us.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
I know you're going to want to help. I'm sure of it. I love that. That's a
wonderful person, and
yeah.
you're going to help me.
No matter what you've heard, right? Well,
Exactly.
and bless them. And that's the Southern girl in me. But being a teacher is so incredibly challenging and
Oh, I
difficult.
know.
And I love that you said, just come with it almost as a partner and with grace. How can we do this together? Let's work this out. My child really needs this. And I'm
Mm-hmm.
sure sometimes a lot of the parents I've talked to said, well, gosh, he or she only has a migraine one time a month. What are the chances it falls on this date? But the stress and the stress of the testing could really not be really could help lead to them having even more of a difficult time coming out of the migraine attack. So I love that advice. We've got parents watching who maybe have a child that's just been diagnosed and maybe they've been searching for a diagnosis for a while. You're managing a lot in your household as a mom, managing so much. And now that you've got one out of college, what's your best advice for parents who do have kiddos or a child diagnosed with migraine?
Well, I mean, that's a big question, because there's advice for me as a parent,
Mm,
how I handle it, how we handle it with the children. And I just try, like I said, I'm a very calm person. And even when they are feeling horrible, we kind of, like I said, we run the gamut where they do all have migraines. And even within that migraine diagnosis, there's a whole, sometimes migraines, you can take your rescue medicine and you're good to go after a half a day or a full day. Some days it's a 3-4 day long journey. They almost seem like they have a virus. Um, my advice is always just stay calm. Don't try and push yourself too much or your child when they have a migraine. It is what it is. It's not going to go away from stress. You worrying about it is not going to help anything.
yeah.
Um, so yeah, and also you have to take care of yourself. That was also some good advice that I got, that you can't take care of anybody if, you're so worried sick, you can't eat or you can't drink. Go for a
Right.
quick walk if your child's old enough to not, need you every second, or, make sure you take care of yourself, because you cannot take care of anybody if you're not taking care of yourself.
I think that is such a good reminder. We probably don't talk enough about caring for the caregiver because we have, just yesterday we were on calls with legislative officials, and several of our folks on the call had to take breaks, and they were patients, and they after a few sessions they had to go lie down, and they were like, this is so hard on my body. And one thing that I want to resonate with people watching that may watch this, a year from now on our YouTube channel is this is a real diagnosis that really can have symptomology that's difficult. I learned something new every day. And the symptomology that, like you said, a child may come home from school and homework's off the table because they've had such a tough day with the symptoms. And I love that how you painted that picture, because I think that we forget about that with the children who have migraine. I think sometimes with adults, you come home, you're tired from work, you're like, I just need a minute to take a break. But our kids really need that if they're struggling and going through a headache attack at the time too.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I'm curious to your child in college. I'd love to have you back and maybe have you back with her. Any advice for parents sending a kiddo to college, or something that you all have learned that you wish you'd have known when she first went within her migraine diagnosis? Because that's a whole new challenge.
Well, it's kind of a weird switch, because it's a switch with anything. When you have a child that's your baby for 18 years, where they're home and you're doing, a lot for them. And then just suddenly one day they're there and they've got to deal with it on their own.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I've tried to make sure, starting a few years ahead of time, having them advocate for themselves with me there to say, hey, you're not feeling great today. When they're younger, and this is also a tip for school and for anything, communication. You do not want, no matter what the grade, whether it's a young kid or a college age kid, do not wait until you are in the middle of a migraine episode to be like, hey, actually, I get bad migraines, so I'm not going to be at the lecture today, or, my kid's not going to be at school today. Start out the year. For her, she went to office hours. talking to her professors about these, and she has probably my more mild case of migraines.
Yeah.
But she's also a college dancer, so she gets concussions. So she's got to have some, not that many. She's had a couple. She just got over one. But just communication with the teachers before you need it,
Yeah.
and having them as they are growing up know the names of their medications, know how
I
frequently they're
love
going to
that
have to have
advice.
them refilled, have them do the refills, go pick it up, because those things don't magically appear and you don't want to wait until you need it to go get it.
Yeah.
So just being ahead of the game on that stuff. And that's just kind of with life in general, to just,
Yes.
they got to start knowing how to take care of themselves.
Yeah.
And if you start it early, even at the doctor's appointments that they go to for checkups, once they get to a certain age, when they'll, doctors will sometimes direct questions to me, I'll just, okay, you can say it too. I'll look at them and be like, you
Absolutely.
need to know this stuff. I know it, and I will always be here if you need me. But you have to start taking those steps to advocate for yourself
Yeah.
in school, in health, and medication, and all that stuff.
I love that. You actually reminded me of one of my favorite, and people who watch this that know me well probably have heard me say this. Someone once taught me that like from 0 to 10 is your nurturing years, you're nurturing your child, and then after a 10, you're launching them. What do you think you should do? What do you think the decision should be? And
Mhm.
preparing them for adulthood. And it's something I've tried to do with my child. And you just painted that picture actually perfectly of looking at your child to say, how do you think you feel, and or what medicine do you think's working? i
Mhm.
I love that advice, because one of the things that came to my mind too is that your daughter is an athlete, and so being an athlete, it's important that people in her around her know that she could have a migraine attack. It could look
Mhm.
like X, Y, and Z, and prepping them, because if she were, knock on wood, have a concussion or a head injury
No
from
more. No more.
no more. They need to know, like, some of her symptoms could also be coming from her migraine diagnosis. We would still want them to do a thorough evaluation.
Yes, that we actually just dealt with that. Sorry to like jump in here,
No,
but
please, please.
her, like I said, she's part of the athletics department. So it is interesting that they just take care of all of it. They have
Right.
their doctors, they have their protocols, they have everything, but they also know she has she gets migraines. They already knew that. They are now the prescribing physicians for her medicine. And so when she had her concussion, after a couple of days, I guess they didn't want her to take too much pain medication because they wanted to see what her symptoms were going to be like without
Yeah.
it. And also, you can't take anything that's going to cause your blood to thin. But they did say, we know you get migraines. Try your migraine medication and see if this is a migraine because of
Yeah.
what you went through, or if it's still continuation of the concussion symptoms. So,
Yes. A great example, a great example. But because she can advocate for herself, and you've taught her to do that, and they knew those things, that's so, so important. Let's have you and your daughter back with us one day and talk about college and migraine, because if you're open, because we do get people saying there's not enough on and going into college and being a person with migraine. And so I think that would be a great discussion to have. And
sure.
I love the way you have formulated this of saying, let's prep her for having that discussion. So
Mhm.
I could talk on, and we've already been on for 20 minutes.
Oh my goodness.
I know it went so
Look at
fast.
the kids.
Thank you for being just such a great example of a mom who's advocating and doing it so well. And I'm sure there are days where you're just like, no more advocating today. Um, but you come so highly thought of and recommended it from someone who says, hey, this is a mom who gets it and is just truly an advocate. So thank you for sharing your experience.
Of course.
And we'd love to have you back to continue our conversation.
Thank you for having me.
Yes, thank you. And for those who are watching, we always are open to conversation topics. If there's something you're interested in, we will find someone to come on and join us. So feel free to throw your comments in the chat. And we're grateful to have you today, Charlotte. We hope you enjoy the rest of your week.
Thank you. You
Great,
too.
thank you. Take care, everyone.